All right, it says I'm live and it's almost noon. So any reason not to get going here?
Not at all. You're running the show, man. I'm ready whenever you are.
All right. So welcome everybody that's going to watch this and tuning in live. I'm Brian Moselle with Integrated Health Services, and this is going to be the first of what I hope is a long series of interviews with some of the people that have been very influential to me in my development, people I'm proud to call my mentors, and people that are at the forefront of bringing you true health and wellness and not just covering up symptoms and masking the problem. And it's my pleasure to interview Dr. Gabe Roberts today from Back to Nature Lifestyle Medicine. He practices out of Kansas City, and I've known him for about a year, and I've learned an incredible amount of knowledge from him, some different tactics and different approaches to achieving health and wellness. So I thought it'd be great to share a little bit of his approach and what he does in his practice so you can get a feel for the type of people that I want to align myself with as I start my journey on this with my own private practice. So as I said, Dr. Roberts runs a clinic out of Kansas City, and their motto is nothing can fix your body better than it can fix itself. And I've been told several times by Dr. Roberts that the body knows nothing but to heal. And I hope some of the questions I ask will shed some insight onto how the body does that. So real quick, wanted to start off with a pretty basic, but might be a pretty detailed answer. The question of how are we doing? How are we doing as a civilization, as a nation in terms of our overall health and wellness when it comes to food supply and how we deal with illness? How are we doing?
Well, I think that's a pretty that's a pretty loaded question. I just did a presentation to some doctors about 2 weeks ago, and I shared our actual up-to-date numbers, and they're pretty daunting about where we're at right now. We're at 1 out of 36 children with autism. And just to put perspective on that, in 1975, we were 1 out of 5,000 children with autism. Now it's 1 out of 36. So it's 1 out of every kindergartner class today. But we're also arguably closer to 1 out of 6 children with ADD, ADHD, some kind of attention spectrum deficit problem. Where about 70% of them are actually medicated. So, but we're also 1 out of 4 with a major allergy, 1 out of 10 with asthma today. 1 out of 3 will be obese by the time they're in college. 1 out of 3 will be diabetic by the time they're in college. Major depressions now hit 1 out of 2 adults. Cancer now, amazingly, with all our war on cancer and all the cancer research that the CDC is funded for, we're now 1 out of 2 people having cancer. And dementia has now affected the entire population. We're also 1 out of 3 males infertile, 1 out of 4 females infertile. And a real perspective on this is if you follow nature's a very successful model to look at. Whenever a certain animal species hits 1 out of 2 as infertile, that entire species is gone within 100 years. So it's pretty dim. So it's pretty dim on where we are, what we're headed. And there's many reasons for that. So fortunately, there are some good answers we can do to help us rely on getting out of this mess that we're in now.
Yeah, not a very good scorecard based on the stats you just put out there. And I love the phrase, the war on cancer. It's are we ever going to eradicate that? And it's become a big mess and big business, as you know, probably better than most.
Yeah, see that the pharmaceutical companies don't want you, and I don't think they have a cure. Okay, they're not like hiding a cure from us, but they're giving us the impression that they are the only source of a cure, when really the cure is within ourselves. Okay, a lot of times people have called me a healer before. There's a common term goes around with people, but I want to make it clear that I can't heal people. Okay, I can facilitate it. I can help them identify the triggers in their life, maybe the thoughts, maybe the toxins, maybe the unhealthy lifestyle they're doing, that can contribute to that. But I can't heal a person any more than I could heal my own child. The only person I can heal is myself, so we don't need more doctors. What we need are more people that are willing to do what's necessary to make themselves healthier and stronger.
You mentioned toxins. I'm going to be doing a lecture in the next couple months on toxicity, whether it's emotional or environmental or behavioral. How toxic, generally speaking, do you think we are as a nation? Are we getting to a critical mass here, or are we pretty bad? What do you think?
Well, the thing about the human bodies are that people don't understand is we're incredibly resilient. Okay, that being said, that's why you still see people functioning, or simply they seem to be functioning. They're just dumbed down enough to run the machines and drive the cars to work, and then they when they get home, they're so burned out from doing stuff that all they want to do is sit on the couch and watch a game or something like that.
Yep.
But Frederico Pereira is a toxicologist out of Columbia University, and she's done some pretty sophisticated studies on this exact topic. And what she's found is your average unborn baby today, before they ever take their first breath, are well exposed to over 230 toxins. So if our unborn babies that have never even taken a breath are exposed to that much, just think about what we're exposed to. It's everywhere. And probably, I think one of the biggest culprits that is responsible for pushing our numbers into this devastating category is our agriculture processes we've used. And in the mid 90s, everything changed. That's when they really started using genetically modified foods, genetically modified organisms, GMOs. And then they started to steep all our crops in this weed killer. And it's not a weed killer. It's actually has about 7 patents as an antibiotic, antimicrobial. But whenever you start to use 300 million pounds of this a year, and it's a water soluble antibiotic, that's where the real mechanism of dispersion comes into play. Because now today you're looking about 75% of our wind, 75% of our rain is contaminated with this Roundup. And whenever we're getting exposed to this, it wipes out our microbes. And what we know is we're your ecosystems. Our bodies are walking, breathing ecosystems that we roughly have about 10 germs per cell of our body, at least, to be healthy and vibrant.
Wow.
And whenever we come in contact with these things, we get sterilized, and that's why we're so sick. If you want to see people that are sick and intolerant to nature's scavengers and things like that, those are the people that are sterilized. And so it's a big mess we're in.
Yeah, and if I remember, like some of the documentaries I've seen, they talked about what mechanism Roundup blocks in our body, and it's one of the major ones is the detox pathway, the shikimate pathway. Is that correct?
Well, the shikimate pathway and the detox pathway are different, but they're
Okay.
both targeted by this glyphosate. Okay, glyphosate does block our detox pathway, which is cytochrome P450 in our liver. Okay, our liver has a remarkable ability, and a lot of skeptics of this, a lot of doctors out there that are not quite caught up on how bad this is. One of their critics is to say, well, our body naturally detoxes. Our body, colon cleanses and all that stuff aren't necessary because, our body literally detoxes every day. And that's how it's supposed to be.
Yep.
Whenever we get in contact with this Roundup, and it's in everyone, it's in every child today. Like I mentioned, it's in all our rain, it's in our tap water. A lot of our foods have it. Even organic foods are starting to get contaminated with it. But it will block that liver function. And your liver has the ability to, if you have a foreign molecule come into your body or a foreign chemical, your liver has a remarkable ability to identify that foreign molecule, and within minutes begin developing an enzyme process to break that apart to clear it out of your body. And that is completely stopped with exposure to Roundup. So that's your detox pathway that gets blocked. Another one, the shikimate pathway you mentioned, is how we make our essential amino acids. Okay. We have to have 26 amino acids to build a human body with. That's not many. 26 amino acids, and we construct the human body. Similar if you had 26 letters of the alphabet, and you could make 1,000,000 words out of that 26 letters.
Yep.
And of those letters of the alphabet, there's a particular group called vowels, and they're extremely important for this alphabet. I mean, try communicating with a coworker or a family member or someone else without using alphabets. I mean, can you do it? It's nearly impossible. Now, back to the 26 amino acids that make up the human body, there is a group of amino acids in there that are just as critical as these vowels, and they're called essential amino acids. And they only get made in our food. Plants and bacteria are the only things that have this ability to make these aromatic ring amino acids that we have to eat. We can't make them on our own. That's why they're called essential. So when Roundup blocks that process, now our foods don't have these aromatic ringed amino acids, which are, again, like vowels, extremely important. These things are like tyrosine. Tyrosine makes dopamine, okay? Tryptophan, things like that. That makes serotonin. So now you have a population of people completely deficient of serotonin, of dopamine, and these are, again, reward centers, and serotonin gets its name from Latin name serenity. So it's the ability to like look at a waterfall or a sunset and just kind of sit there and enjoy the moment, to be present. That's gone in people today. That's why we're 1 out of 2 people depressed, because our foods are deficient in these and vital aromatic ringed amino acids. So that's what we do know. There's probably a lot more behind that we don't know. So pretty grim though.
Interesting stuff. And you mentioned the 90s is when things started to change with the agriculture. And that's really when I started to have problems myself. I'm 38, and my senior year of high school, my digestion went to crap. And it got so bad. I went through about 17 years of that. Got so bad I didn't even want to go out with friends. And it wasn't until I found somebody that knew nutrition that I was able to reverse those symptoms and finally, heal properly. And that's sort of what launched me into this. I didn't know at the time, but it sort of launched me on this trajectory and this path of this type of work. And brings me to my next question is, it seems like a lot of people I've talked to in this line of work, I mean, you're a chiropractor, you're a certified functional medicine practitioner and a B.E.S.T practitioner. And it seems like most people have a story or a personal history with health problems. And when they came around to finding the true cause and fixing it, sort of put them on this path that I'm on. Do you have a personal story or a reason you sort of went into this line of work?
I've actually got a couple stories that have contributed to me getting into this work, and it's not really mainstream, but those numbers I just read off are mainstream. You know what I mean? So probably my earliest, again, one of the things that has always allowed me to keep an open mind is my work overseas. I've actually visited a blue zone in Okinawa one time, to where I saw a guy 105 years old sprawl into a horse and ride around cutting coconuts out of a tree with a machete in his hand.
Wow.
Big grin on his face. I mean, happier than anyone in this building, okay, at 105. So those kind of things stick with you. And then I came back from overseas. I worked in a hospital for about 1.5 years as a paramedic. So I worked in emergency rooms. I worked in the back of ambulances, things like that. And as a paramedic student, rather. And I just saw people getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And during that journey in the hospitals, whenever I actually got sick, I had some, and I don't think it was really the digestive. I think it was chronic stress that just overloaded me from being a Marine for 8 years, having a stress ahead of time before that, with a pretty stressful childhood, and then boom, into a hospital to where you're working in that environment, and my body just like a balloon. That's what stress does. It builds up like a balloon, and you don't even realize it till one day it just bursts. And I was pretty sick. I went through several doctors in about 1 year's time until I found some energy work. And at the time I was kind of skeptical. I wasn't sure what I was getting into. You never heard anyone talk about it. You never hear anything about this. So it's one of those things that you don't find on Google, you find through word of mouth. And that kind of opened the door, as well as my current wife, Tiffany. When I met her, she was pretty into energy work. And I almost wanted to kind of roll my eyes like, okay, you're one of these people. And then she introduced me into some people, and she showed me some things that really let me know I had no clue what I was talking about. So many of those things have kind of led me to where I went down this path. And I can share one story to where this really will drive home. This will make a lot more sense to why my practice is the way it is run. When I was a chiropractic student at Cleveland, I was working in the clinic as an intern, and I had a particular patient who was a Vietnam vet, and he had both hips replaced. So there was about an inch, difference in his leg length. Thank you, VA hospital, right?
Yeah.
So, as a result of all this, he had a really bad knee. His knee hurt all the time because of his leg difference. And as I worked on him, I used a $25,000 high-tech, top-of-the-line laser on his knee. And I could knock it down from maybe a 7 to a 3. And that's pretty respectable in the clinic, using, these kind of alternative tools to give someone pain relief as opposed to pain meds or something else. Mm-hmm. But that was pretty common. Every week I'd see him, every 2 weeks I'd see him, the knee pain would come right back. So, and I'm using just manual adjustments, using this laser, and long story short, I get out of practice. Tiffany introduces me to some mentors, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. And I actually called that guy in to my clinic, and I said, hey, I have a mentor now. I want to introduce you to him and tell me if you think this is crazy or if this is really something that's legit. Because this guy is a Vietnam vet. He's a pilot. He's a respected detective in the Johnson County area. So I knew he would be pretty grounded and be able to tell me this guy's out of his mind, or, whoa, what is this, right? I wanted his opinion of my mentor. So at my old clinic, I brought my mentor in. I introduced him. They shook hands. And my mentor started to work on the guy doing simple B.E.S.T techniques, which is, bioenergetic synchronization technique. And he did some work on this guy. And when the patient, we'll call him Rick, that's his name, when he stood up, I remember he goes, my knee. And I kind of go, what about it? And he goes, it doesn't hurt anymore at all.
Wow.
And we both looked at my mentor's name was Daryl Rhodes at the time. We both looked at him and said, what'd you do? And my mentor goes, I turned off his pain fibers. Okay. Rick got up and walked down the hall perfectly. And again, a leg length difference of an inch. Okay. Every time he walks, you can see it. He walked down the hallway perfectly after this. And Tiffany even goes, look how good he's walking. 0 knee pain. And that's when I really realized that there was something I was greatly missing. And he simply did this by touching the guy,
Sure. Yep.
And then years later, I learned bioenergetic synchronization technique. And that was the guy who taught me B.E.S.T. Okay. That's just a higher brain adjustment. It's a superior technique to your standard manual manipulation, because you can get in a little deeper and you can actually use the body's own energy. Again, people aren't used to hearing energy, and sometimes they'll kind of roll their eyes, but they'll go get an acupuncture treatment without even thinking about it. What is that? My question is, what is that? When you go sit down to an acupuncturist and they, put some needles into your body in a certain area and leave you for 20 minutes, and they come back and they remove the needles, and there's a change in maybe your asthma, there's a change in your digestion, Yep. There's a change in your nervous system, there's a change in your stress level just from that. What did those needles do? They're stainless steel little utensils, right? Yep. Well, it's basically, that's what B.E.S.T is. It's a way of kind of coordinated the body and saying, hey, wake up, the problem's right here. And when the body can realize, or there's an interference or there's a block keeping it from recognizing that, B.E.S.T simply removes that and allows the body to heal on its own. It's pretty groundbreaking stuff. There's a lot of published literature on it, and it's been proven in double-blind studies and things like that, randomized control trials, and it actually does come out overwhelmingly higher success than your standard manual adjustments. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a patient of yours for almost 6 months, give or take, and I've undergone some of those adjustments myself, and I still, I'm a skeptic by nature, and it's amazing to me how you're in Kansas City, I'm in Minnesota, and you're doing these adjustments from there, and I'm noticing a difference.
Yeah,
And
discs going in and everything else. No, see, that's not B.E.S.T though. Okay.
okay,
Um, again, um, I've had several mentors, and Daryl Rhodes taught me B.E.S.T, and B.E.S.T is what I do presently when someone's in front of me. Okay.
gotcha.
Another mentor, his name was Andre Camelli, and he introduced something called quantum integration. And that is what I've used on you, quantum integration. A lot of people are not sure of this, but it's 20-year-old information. Okay. Lynn McTaggart, she wrote the book, The Field. She also wrote the book, The Intention Experiment. And she was skeptical. Most people are skeptical by nature when they don't understand something. But this woman, skeptical, she actually documented scientists in different labs. And you've read this book, so chime in anytime.
Yep.
But he has put scientists in different labs, and we'll just say a group in Chicago and then another group in New York, okay, of scientists measuring these little water tables and measuring seed growth of little plants. And then she'd have her readers 1,000 miles away, all of them, a group of maybe 50 readers, send an intention with their thoughts to these labs. And they did that 30 times, and there was 26 remarkable changes in those labs. So this all comes down to the quantum world, and this is changing the healthcare system in Europe right now. And I've had some people, when they hear this, they get very skeptical. I had a guy yesterday on Facebook actually call me what would he call me? A snake oil salesman. Doesn't bother me at all. I know what he does in his free time. You get punched in the head a lot. There's no way you're going to be able to think clearly. And that's just facts. But people don't realize how much potential there is in our bodies and how much of this we're related to energy, and some people are closed off to it. And some people aren't capable even recognizing that because of the toxins we're exposed to. Fluoride, for instance, in our water, something that we should never have in the human body. And that is known to calcify what's called your pineal gland or your third eye. So if you're drinking tap water and your pineal gland is calcified, forget about doing any kind of energy work at all. You're going to be closed off to it.
Yeah, it's one of the things I'm going to talk about at my toxins lecture is the local water supply here. I found their the annual water report, and fluoride is actually listed as a contaminant. And I don't know of a positive contaminant. I think by definition, a contaminant is not good. It's a negative. But according to the health department, it's great for your teeth, which you and I know is a complete fallacy. It actually makes your teeth worse, makes them more brittle, and can cause pitting and all sorts of other problems. But a lot of people don't talk about, like you said, the pineal gland calcification, which affects your sleep because that's where your melatonin comes from. And it's one of those topics that not a lot of people want to talk about. They think you're crazy for bringing that up, but I think the literature will more than back us up on that in that regard.
Yeah, and I don't think that. I think today, it's not that people aren't open to hearing the information or open to suggestions about, maybe getting healthy, but you probably see this a lot. I know a lot of my local doctors do. I actually talked to a doctor in Washington on the phone yesterday. He sees the same problem. Whenever we approach the public right now and we try to talk about healthy living or healthy lifestyle or ways to get healthy, people block it off. They close off right now. And the reason why is because people are so toxic. Okay. There's more than enough contaminants in our environment today. You add the 5G, you add the aluminum, you add the Roundup in the rain, the food additives, the genetically modified organisms, all these things. And then there's a coffee shop on every corner. And most of these coffees are very, very toxic. And even Starbucks in California now is ordered to put on the side of their cup, this product will cause cancer. And coffees are notoriously sprayed with pesticides, fungicides, herbicides. I've never had a guy come in and pass a hair analysis test who drinks Folgers. Just, I'm going to throw that out there.
Sure.
Because of heavy metals. So when people are consuming toxic foods and we're in a consuming toxic environment, that's automatically going to put their body in a threat mode. Okay. It's going to turn this prefrontal brain off and activate what's called the R complex, or the most primitive reptilian brain. And that's what you're going to see most people are operating from today. They're operating from a low IQ, animalistic, survival only, inner child. You know, when someone bashes somebody else on Facebook for nothing at all, that's an inner child. You know, that's not an adult. That's not a real adult. So, you know, again, and when you try to talk to people about things, they're going to revert to this inner child and shut down. And it's essentially because they're so toxic. They're too caffeinated. They're, you know, too medicated, all kinds of things. So it's really important to get people unsedated and grounded and level-headed so they can actually start to put together some problem-solving thoughts to get out of this mess.
That's a good point. I was talking to a client of mine on Monday about coffee, and you know, one of our favorites, Jason Christoff, is very vocal in his. The first thing he said, he wanted to wear a sign around his head that says, like, "How much coffee do you drink?" Because he asked every one of his clients that, and I made the point that you can't go to like a Target or, you know, Walmart where there's not a coffee shop in there, and that lowers. It makes you make. It prevents you from making better decisions, and it lowers your inhibitions, and you see that product on the wall that you might not need, and oh, you're caffeinated, so why not? We might not need it, but let's get it. Makes you more impulsive, like you said, and you're right, they're everywhere. And we'll talk about coffee in a little bit, because I know there's some different types of coffee out there that can actually benefit you rather than work against you, and help, you know, keep that lower arc, the reptilian brain shut off or mitigated. I want to ask you one quick question. You're a certified functional medicine practitioner, and in a couple of weeks, I'll be joining those ranks. I'll be certified myself. And if you ask 10 people, you know, what is functional medicine to you, you'll probably get 10 different answers. And it seems to be popping up everywhere. Everybody's functional this, functional that. What does it mean to be a functional medicine practitioner to you?
That's a great question. Functional medicine to me would be the intelligent use of alternative medicine, but it's a system that's going to focus on the body's ability to heal. And that's where we're really mentioned with conventional medicine. Nobody talks about healing. Doctors don't ever talk about healing, with the exception of maybe a wound healing, okay? So it's a system that focuses on the body's ability to heal, but we also look at people as a whole person, not just a physical body, but a spiritual, emotional entity. And that has to be looked at all aspects, okay, for the person. Takes into account all aspects of lifestyle, including components that understanding health and contributing factors to health and contributing factors to illness as well. It takes the doctor-patient relationship very serious and puts a lot of pride into that. And also the last thing is it makes use of all therapies. And that's where some people are not even sure of, you know, what B.E.S.T is, or what muscle testing is, or even what acupuncture meridians are. Okay. Yep. But functional medicine in our clinic, we take account all aspects of healing, regardless of their source, regardless of where it comes from, as long as it has reasonable evidence behind it and ethical values to where it's not going to cause any harm to people. And you're right, functional medicine now is popping up all over the place. And I'm sad to report that most people who do it aren't really entwined into the functional medicine aspect. And I can say that because about 40% of our patients that come into here have already seen other functional medicine doctors, and they've paid thousands out of pocket. They had lots of lab work done, and essentially they're treated with synthetic vitamins. That's what we see a lot of, and it's very it's unfortunate, but it's pretty common.
Yeah, that brings me to another question. Is we've talked a lot about muscle testing, and it's a great tool, and it's one of the skills that you use to help, like you said, identify synthetics. And for people that aren't familiar with what muscle testing is, it's just like the functional medicine piece. Everyone's a muscle tester, or in some way or another. And can you describe what muscle testing is and how it helps you in your practice identify maybe some synthetic vitamins, which are rampant? So how do you use muscle testing, and maybe what is it for the audience?
Okay. Yeah. Muscle testing is, again, and I'll say this because Dr. Tent's the one that said this a long time ago, and he's one of my mentors, especially on the nutritional side.
Yep.
But I had about 4 contact reflex analysis mentors, including him. Okay. And contact reflex analysis is a way of using acupuncture meridians on the body to find out where the priority is. So when somebody comes in with an array of symptoms, okay, and I'll just say this because I used this example this week already. I had a lady come in. She's kind of a bigwig. She runs a big business, and when she came in, she has she's seen an endocrinologist and a rheumatologist as well. And she comes in and she has this diagnosis of polymyalgia rheumatica, which means she's got all kinds of pains all over the place and they're not sure why. So systemic pains. And this woman would flat out tell me it's in this finger, and now it's in this knee, and now it's in this shoulder, now it's in my neck, and it just randomly comes all over the place. So we put her through some pretty good protocols. We put her through a good cleanse to clear out all kinds of infections she was carrying, stealth infections. And she comes in this week, and I go through her reflexes, again, checking out what's hot on her body, and her virus reflex is red hot, okay? And the cleanse I just put her through gets rid of viruses. So then I said, okay, so what are you eating? You've got to be eating something to keep these viruses active, because we just give you nutrition to put that under control. Viruses are, again, something missed by most doctors, but viruses are pretty easy to control with adequate amounts of ionized calcium and vitamin C, okay? I've seen people with vitamin C infusions completely eradicate hepatitis. You can't even detect it anymore. So vitamin C is great for virus control. Now, this woman comes in and she does tell me, my hot flashes have gotten worse. And I said, what about your joint pain? It's still there. Okay. So even though she went through a cleanse and her infectious load just dropped a lot, okay, hot flashes, still has aches and pains.
Yep.
And she told me, I'm considering going and getting hormone treatments to get these hot flashes under control. So, what can we do? Rather than running a bunch of lab tests on hormones and everything else, I simply check her hormone reflex, which is right here, and it's cold, completely cold. Check the things, virus reflex is red hot. And then I said, what are you eating? Well, she's eating pecans and things like that, which are high arginine foods, and high arginine foods fuel viruses.
Yep.
Now it makes sense. The detective work of, you're not having a hormone craze. Your viruses are staying active because you're eating high arginine foods. So I say, we'll send you to your rheumatologist you like. This will save you $1,000. Have him run a viral. Sure enough, active viruses on it. Now, that's just one example of where using contact reflex analysis shows the body's priority. It shows exactly what's going on with the body. And your body has this circuit board of meridians on it. And when it's fighting something, just like when you're fighting allergies or fighting a cold or fighting an infection, your body is very electric. And we know that if you stuck your finger in a socket, you'd be getting electrified, getting shocked. And if somebody came up and grabbed your arm, they would experience that same shock. Yep. And you can make a chain of 50 people and everyone's sharing that electric current, getting shocked until someone gets a chair and knocks the first person off. So our nervous system, our brain works off electricity, and your body has this brilliant ability. When it's fighting something, it's going to prioritize and channel electricity towards the biggest threat. And that's why reflexes get hot. So you can find out very quickly if a person has a hormone problem, if it's a thyroid issue, if it's a viral, if it's a parasite problem, if their brain is getting fried, whatever it might be. Sometimes people come in and they have heavy metal toxicity and, they have trouble speaking and they have tremors or whatever else. the first thing I like to check is their brain. Is this something primarily from the brain? No. Then you find a toxin reflex. Then you can send them out for a hair analysis and look deeper. And sure enough, boom, you'll find heavy metals. So those things really help narrow down your approach on finding the priority of what's going on with the person. Regardless of the symptoms, you do the muscle testing and then you run the test appropriate for that, the lab test to follow up and see what's going on.
Yeah, you mentioned the foods high in arginine, and I'm one of our shared mentors, Dr. Randy Tent out at Diverse Health Services, talked about, I saw him a few years ago and I visited him a few times. And one of the first questions he asked me was, how did you get sick as a kid? Was it bacterial or viral? And I was without a doubt more viral with sore throats and strep throats. And he talked about arginine, like you said, and I started taking lysine, which can help balance that out. And I tell you, I used to get cold sores twice a year. I haven't had one since I started taking that and monitoring my arginine-rich foods. So there's a point there that the stuff, you can manage it with the right certain, smart, intelligent supplements and tailoring that diet. And that arginine does fuel the viruses. There's no doubt.
I've seen that in a number of depressed women that come in. They're majorly depressed. And I'll find viruses, sometimes viruses in their brains, because these things can go anywhere. Viruses are so tiny that they can actually pass through a condom. I mean, they're so small, right? So they can go anywhere in the body and be virtually undetectable. But I have seen women with viruses in their brain and they have severe depression. And we don't really get anywhere until we start eliminating these high arginine foods and putting them on a break to the viruses. And that's lysine. Again, lysine, very helpful for that. So
I think I was talking to Dr. Richard Olery out in Michigan. I think he said their viruses are either 100 or 1,000 times smaller than a bacteria.
It's incredibly, some of these are like tens of thousands of times smaller. I mean, very, very small.
All right, so shifting gears a little bit, you and I have talked a lot about mushrooms, and some of the more brilliant minds in this field, like Sachin Patel, Dr. Bob Rakowski, they're gung-ho about mushrooms. And you've told me some things about mushrooms.
Paul Stamets too.
Stamets, yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, you've talked to me about studies with mushrooms detoxifying dirt loaded with crude oil. So what is it about mushrooms that you think separates or sets them apart from a traditional supplement or a traditional approach to health? How do they work and how do they do what they do?
Okay, that's a great question. I think when it comes to supplements, when it comes to giving someone magnesium, giving someone zinc, giving someone maybe vitamin D or even vitamin A or vitamin C, those are what I would consider hardware upgrades. Okay. Hardware upgrade happens slowly over time. You're not going to have someone feel a big difference with magnesium until you get it pretty saturated levels in their cells, before they start to feel the effects. That's a hardware upgrade. Mushrooms are a software upgrade. That means they feel it immediately. And out of like I mentioned earlier, technology, nature is what's going to heal nature. That's plain that simple, right?
Yep.
So nature is the most successful model there is, and mushrooms are the absolute pinnacle of the technology that nature has. Mushrooms outnumber trees and plants that we are familiar with 10 to 1. So there's way more fungal matter in the world than we're aware of. And the mycelium network that runs through the Earth's soil and is kind of the original internet of the globe has an impressive ability to use root networks and navigate through very harsh soil. And when it comes across anything, it could be motor oil, it could be diesel fuel, it could be radioactive decay, it could be plastic, it could be anything. It has the ability to immediately generate enzymes to start breaking that down, and it gets stored in its genetic capacity. So now that mycelium is much more powerful. That's the most powerful organism we know of in the world, because nothing can stop it, right? I mean, it can navigate through radioactive material that would kill everything else.
Sure.
It can oil slick out in the ocean into an oasis of life within 8 weeks. I mean, that's phenomenal. So that's what mycelium does. And then what we see when we see the mushrooms above the ground or on the side of trees, those are actually the more frail part, and they usually fall apart within a few days. So there's a lot more to mushrooms than people realize, and they are absolutely what's going to be one of our answers with this healthcare crisis that we're in today. Many of the problems we see in the world today can be solved with mushrooms, including our health problems and, again, our toxicity that we're fully exposed to.
Yeah, we have 18 acres of land at our house, and one of my favorite things to do is just go exploring with my son in the woods. My daughter's not quite old enough to venture out there, but we see mushrooms all over the place, and really fun stuff to watch him, explore and discover that stuff. And one of the products that you've introduced me to, and I've had a lot of success with, is the Organo Gold lineup of, they have coffee drinks, but they also have spore powders and a number of other products, but which are infused with organic Ganoderma or reishi mushroom. And what differences, you use it a lot in your practice and yourself with your family, what differences have you seen with your clients or yourself and your family when you use these products?
So this place is kind of a mushroom headquarters. I study mushrooms probably about an hour to an hour and a half a day, every day. And we have several different lineups of products in here. Some are for professionals only. We have breast cancer protocols. We have depression protocols, all sorts of different things with mushrooms. And since using Organo, nothing compares to the potency of them. And there's several different mushrooms out there. There's got lion's mane, you have shiitake, all these different ones that can provide, you got chaga, all these different ones that have medicinal properties.
Yep.
What I like about Organo is their reishi is of the highest quality ever. Nothing else I've seen compares to it. And it has to do with the way they actually harvest it. When you're getting mushroom in its natural environment, 185 miles away from the closest civilization, it has to activate its own defense systems because it's during the elements. And when that goes on, the nutrients, the phytochemicals, the antioxidants in it have to go up. And that is where those chemicals, when you consume that, become disease-fighting chemicals for you. And what I've noticed is some of my competing companies aren't grown as high as quality that. They're grown on wood chips, or they're grown on rice, maybe sometimes even in labs. And Organo is very, very picky about not, they have very strict rules on where their mushroom comes from. And some of the things I've seen in practice are absolutely phenomenal with people simply swapping out one of their daily beverages with this. We've seen many children, behavioral problems quickly resolve after drinking the hot cocoa version of this. Lots of people with pains and aches kind of go away. Mm-hmm. One of the most successful cases, and I will this is a really groundbreaking case that I'm thrilled about. About 5 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I had a woman from Nebraska come in, and a wonderful woman. We sat down and talked, and she's a nurse, and she was forced to get a flu shot every year, right? And in 1996, she leans right in and looks me in the eyes and says, and the one of 96 is what got me. And I said, what happened? She says, I got a flu shot. I'm forced to every year. And 2 hours later, I'm having numbness and tingling in my legs. And within a matter of minutes after that, I was paralyzed. I couldn't move my legs. I couldn't walk. So I went over and I pulled out some published literature, and I said, everything we do here is scientific, although it's not mainstream. I want you to be informed. Here is, Neuromuscular Journal of Endocrinology Diseases. And it happened to say that the highest number of Guillain-Barré cases happen to people that get the flu shot. And that's what it was. She had a positive diagnosis of Guillain-Barré, mm-hmm. and she knows it was from that shot. So, she's got systemic pain. She can't go more than, I'd say, 30 seconds without grimacing in pain of some sort. Multiple autoimmune things going on. And I said, I was just thinking, where do I even start her on? So I put her on two things. I put her on a product for her no gallbladder. She has a gallbladder removed. Okay. Put her on that to make sure she can start absorbing her fats and absorbing vitamin A, F, D, and K. Get her brain some nourishment, because your brain has to have fat. If you don't have a gallbladder, you're not going to absorb fat.
Yep.
And I told her this. I said, I want you to take a spore every hour on the hour waking hour. Okay. And that was about a month ago. And since then, we've been in contact, and her family has noticed a big difference. She's moving around without pain. She's able to function more. And that's all we've done. So the technology is incredible. What it's doing, I really couldn't even tell you. And I don't think anyone else could either. But I know that they have the ability to detoxify. I know they have the ability to turn an oil slick into an oasis of life. I know they have the ability to absolutely outperform rheumatoid arthritis, narcotics, and fibromyalgia pain medications,
Yep.
every time they're compared. So there's a lot of that going on. And I just try to look at it simply of, let's try something simple and see what happens. And just a remarkable change with just using spores. So it's pretty phenomenal.
And spores, for the audience, is the nutritional center and the blueprint for that mushroom. Like, isn't it akin to eating like seeds of a plant instead of the actual plant itself?
Yeah. So when it comes to mushrooms, there's three parts. Okay. And you can see these mushrooms right here, right there. Okay. The bell part, okay, is what we mostly see common when it comes out of the ground. We see the bell, or the flowery part. And that has probably the most powerful detoxification properties. When it comes to Ganoderma, those bell parts are what heals organs. It heals brain, it heals liver, it heals kidneys, things like that. So that's what the bell does. And then there's the root network, the mycelium, we already kind of talked about a little bit, okay? And that acts as three things: the nervous system, the immune system, and the digestive system of the forest. So whenever you eat those, it's going to improve those three things in you, okay? Plus there's some lung function it has as well, because mycelium actually breathes, all the fungus actually breathes oxygen like we do. It expels carbon dioxide. So it'll give you some respiratory assistance as well. And then the third part is the seeds, or the spores. And they contain all the information because they're the reproductive part. So they're the most potent. And what I like about organospores is they have a unique patent process where 99.9% of that nutritional value in those spores is available when you eat them. Most other companies can't crack those microscopic spores the way that they have. And so if you eat those spores, they're just going to pass right through you. Right. But that's not the case with organo. You're actually able to essentially use those nutrients. And the spores are where everything's packed in there very densely.
Very cool. We got about maybe 10 or 15 minutes left?
I'm good. So just
all right.
Keep
rolling. Whenever I talk to people like yourself, Dr. Tent, I've asked, I know Dr. Jeff Seneschal out in Diverse Health Services. I always ask people like you, what does your daily protocol look like? I've shared mine. I have advertisements here for what my adult daily protocol looks like, and my children's one. Everyone's a little different on how they tailor their daily protocols for supplementation. So can you talk a little bit about yours and what you take and why?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I tell you what, I'm big in the 91 essential nutrients. Okay. And that's 2 fatty acids. That's actually 3 if you count the 7. There's omega-3, there's omega-6, but now there's a 7 and a 9. So you could say there's 92 essential nutrients. But I'm really big into oils, making sure you get good fish oil, but also making sure you have a good omega-6 that is going to counterbalance that. So a good flaxseed oil, you want to make sure people can actually break that down. Sometimes you can't. But those are your fatty acids. Then there's 12 amino acids that you want to make sure you're getting. And if you're eating proteins like eggs, you're eating good grass-fed beef, things like that, you're going to have adequate amounts of protein. And I think animal protein with the fat it hits a little harder to our brain. A lot of vegetarians, I don't think, get enough a good source of fat for their brains. And there's some pretty surprising literature coming out on that. So amino acids, then I take I take a good handful of standard process every day. I take Cataplex C, which is a good vitamin C. I take Cadlin. And what I'll do with those, okay, again, the 91 essential nutrients, but what I think is it depends on how your workload is. So if you are really working and you're stressed out, or you're about the computer all day and you're using a lot of brain power, you're going to burn through those a little quicker.
Sure.
If you are doing presentations and you're getting all these things together, you're going to burn through your reserves a little quicker. Now, if it's a weekend and you're not working and you're hanging out with the family and you're not sweating and you're not burning through all your reserves, I think those are good days that you can take off of your your nutrients. You don't necessarily need to replace them every day. You can pulse them. Okay. And that's essentially what I do. I kind of fill myself out depending on the workload and the stress load that I'm currently going through. On days when I'm not quite as stressed, I don't load up as much. On days when I am stressed, I'll double down, triple down on the mushrooms, just to make sure that I'm keeping my body as parasympathetic as possible, or in that rest and digest as possible.
Yep.
So
that makes me think of, as I'm finishing up my functional medicine stuff, one of the books they mentioned is zebras don't get ulcers or something like that. Because like you said, the parasympathetic, we shouldn't be in this constant state of fight or flight, which is your sympathetic dominance. Whereas, a zebra gets attacked, goes right into sympathetic, gets out of dodge, tries to get away from the attacker, then it goes right back down to its parasympathetic, where I'd argue the vast majority of people today they're stressed to the max. They don't digest properly. They're just in a constant state of stress, and yeah, it wreaks havoc on the body.
absolutely. And I think the most passive way, and again, I've taught breathing techniques to people for years. I've taught thousands of people emotional freedom technique, breathing techniques, transcendental meditation, to make sure that they have the tools to get them out of that sympathetic state. And in the majority of the cases, it's a fraction of success because people are just so overstimulated. You name it. People are stressed about finances today. People are stressed about their health, their children's health. And the fastest and quickest way I've found that gets people into this more rest and digest mode is the organo coffees. The organo products are great for getting people out of that. And you're exactly right. Zebras don't get ulcers because they're not watching the politics on the TV.
Yep.
They're not stressed about their neighbor. They're not stressed about this person judging them or anything else. They have to fight off the crocodile or whatever it is, or the lion or the hyena, and then they make it back to the crowd and their stress level immediately drops. Yep. And that's something that, again, that's a model of success that nature has, and we need to mimic that. So it's very important that we are doing methods, practicing methods to neutralize that stress, the harmful effects it does to our body and mind. Otherwise, it's going to build up, and next thing you know, you're going to be losing sleep. And next thing you know, you're going to be grabbing a Starbucks or a Tim Hortons or something else. And that's going to ultimately just keep your stress level higher. And, it's going to cause all kinds of problems. One of the books that Jason Christoff pointed out to me, and it was very helpful, is called Caffeine Blues. I highly recommend you read that, and it'll really paint a picture of why coffee causes so many divorces,
Sure. Yeah, and that's one thing I noticed. I think I switched to the organo line back in December, and I was on it for about 2 months, and then my wife and I made a pot of organic, ground coffee, and it tasted completely bitter, and I honestly didn't like it. And the caffeine comparison in a cup of the organo is only about 9 milligrams, and the typical regular cup of coffee has about 140. And that the Ganoderma mushroom helps offset any of that minute amount of caffeine in there. But if you're drinking the Starbucks or the Caribou here in the upper Midwest, you got that caffeine spike putting you in that sympathetic dominant mind, and it takes its toll. It's great for the energy and the focus that you get from caffeine, but all the negative side effects can be, it makes it not worth it.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Caffeine's not giving you energy. Okay. It's stimulating a tired horse. If that makes, you're beating a tired horse. The horse is running and you're beating it harder. So it's not giving you an outside energy source.
Yep.
It's what it's going to do is it's going to exhaust you quicker. Okay. And people that drink the Ganoderma coffee notice an energy surge that goes up and it stays throughout the day. And like I said, it's a software upgrade. So it's immensely different mechanisms behind that. And anytime somebody's in that caffeine rush where they're jittery, their digestive processes are completely shut off as well. Their immune system is completely suppressed.
Yep.
So that's why a lot of people that drink coffee essentially have to give it up because they get ulcers or, joint pains, things like that, because that over time, that caffeine's a diuretic.
Yep.
And it makes your body expel water more and more and more. And you'll actually lose that mucus layer in the lining in the gut. And that's where the ulcers come in. You'll actually decrease the amount of fluids in your joints. So your knee pain, your low back pain, shoulder pain, that's all very common with coffee drinkers. And I've seen this myself, and Dr. Tint had this in one of his lectures a while back. He had a guy come in and he took an x-ray of him and just said, how much coffee do you drink a day? And the guy said, how'd you know that? I drink like a pot and a half of coffee a day. So that much acidity regularly in your body has to go through 12 buffering systems in your body. And the last one uses calcium in kind of a desperation mode to get that acidity neutralized.
Yep.
And so it'll actually start to pull calcium out of your reserves. It'll pull calcium out of your bones. And that's why long-term coffee drinkers will always have osteoporosis.
Yeah. And one of my friends here in town, she's a yoga instructor, owns a yoga studio. And I think she commented on it after having a couple of cups that it's a relaxed energy, if that makes sense. It's a calm focus, but you don't get all hyped up and hopped up on caffeine. The mushroom is so powerful that it's helping you focus and not having all those detrimental health effects, the osteoporosis, kidney stones from all that caffeine and the calcium trying to help out. So it's a powerful product. And if people aren't familiar with that line, you can contact Dr. Roberts or myself to learn more. But I talk about it wherever I go because most people drink coffee, and it's worth making the switch. And it's about 60 cents a cup for the black coffee. So not going to break the bank.
Yeah. And with our numbers dwindling the way we were, I firmly believe this is the answer because, you're not going to get people that start eating healthy right away, but having to swap out a cup of coffee to a healthier choice is much simpler. You're meeting them halfway, and they're going to start getting additional health benefits. And when that happens, they'll start, sharing it with their spouse and their family and things like that. So this is the most cost-effective approach I know of to stop the trajectory we're headed towards as a population.
And it's one of those things where it's almost like a sacred cow for people. If you suggest, hey, you should cut down on your coffee, it's like, no, like people say, I gotta have my morning coffee. Well, now you can. It's not going to upset your stomach like the acidity and the pesticides on regular coffee. You can have that, and you're going to get tremendous health benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. One of my favorite topics to discuss with clients and anyone that'll listen is minerals. And another one of my mentors, Dr. Richard Ulrey, who wrote Minerals for the Genetic Code. He practices about 4 hours north of Detroit, and I had the pleasure of shadowing him in December. One of the most brilliant people I've ever talked to, and he studied the interaction of minerals with our DNA for over 30 years. And it's one of the things I talk to people about, especially with like ADD, ADHD symptoms, autoimmune problems. I mean, you name it, mineral deficiency can create problems. So what are your thoughts on the importance of minerals, and what impact has introducing minerals to your clients had on their health?
Well, I'll tell you what, when we were talking about essential nutrients a little back, the 91 essential nutrients, and I mentioned, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids. Then there's 60 minerals.
Yep.
So 2/3 of our essential nutrients that our bodies have to function properly are essentially minerals. And Linus Pauling says this best. He says, without minerals, vitamins are totally useless. Okay.
Yep.
So minerals are the spark plugs to our genes. They control and can dial down and dial up your genetic changes inside your body, and how you can turn cancer cells on and turn cancer cells off with that, as well as many other diseases. Um, one of my favorite things to use are mineral tranquilizers on people that come in there extremely stressed out, and they make it, again, that's kind of a that's a hardware upgrade, but it happens pretty quick. People can take some mineral tranquilizers and immediately they're just calm and tranquil, and their body doesn't adapt to these like it would like a Xanax or a Valium or something like that. So that's been a big home run for me. But also the just a number of, sometimes these are hardware upgrades and you really don't feel the changes immediately. But if you're consuming your 90 essential nutrients and you have proper signaling going, okay,
Yep.
you're going to essentially stay disease free, because minerals are something that are going to help control your gene function. And it's something that we just don't have enough of today. Our soil is actually depleted of it. So even going into the 90s, we didn't have any minerals in our food to begin with. And now with the addition of this Roundup, this glyphosate, one of the mechanisms it does is it's a mineral chelator. So
Yep.
it actually blocks the function of 9 to 16 trace minerals you have every time you come in contact with this. So if you go to a restaurant and you're eating corn chips, your zinc and your yttrium and your copper and your calcium and things like that are going to actually get blocked, and you're not going to be able to have function of those with that. So that's a big problem.
Yep. One of my, if I'm hearing you on the 90 or 92 essentials, are you channeling Dr. Joel Wallach at all with that?
Exactly.
Yeah. One of my favorite books is Dead Doctors Don't Lie, and if I remember correctly, he was the first to discover the non-human case of cystic fibrosis in rhesus monkeys, and I think it was a selenium deficiency. And he brought it up to the attention of his superior at the lab or the place he was working at, and he was fired because they said if there's going to be all his colleagues verified, yes, this is the first non-human case of cystic fibrosis. And the head of that lab said, if there's ever going to be a breakthrough in cystic fibrosis, it's going to be because of me, and he was fired for it.
Yeah, the same thing happened to Jerry Lewis as well with muscular.
Yes. Yep.
So again, you're seeing these corruptions going on and hiding materials from people. And what I like about Joe Wallach is his work proved that they solved 900 different diseases in animals. Years back, I think it was in the 40s and the 50s, they were considering putting a Medicare, Medicaid organization in place for animals. So all your livestock, all your pets, all your ducks, all your cats, your dogs, horses, everything you have would essentially fall under this branch of Medicare for animals. It'd be an insurance thing for them. And what they realized was this system would cost so much that a chicken breast would be like $100. Getting a dozen eggs would be about $50. Yep. So they quickly realized that this system would not work because your average consumer could not afford basic animal goods, could not afford to buy these animal products. And so what they decided was, hey, I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll eliminate the diseases in animals. Okay. And they started doing that with pellet form of food and addition of minerals. And if you go to a pet store today, you get a bag of dog food, you read the side, it's going to say crude fat, crude protein, crude minerals, and things like that, and give you a percent breakdown because they're feeding your animals minerals. Okay.
Yep.
And if you take your dog to a vet or you take your cat to a vet, and this vet is kind of on top of things and he's not just sitting there going through the motions, but he's actually passionate about his work, and your animal keeps getting sick, he's going to ask you, what are you feeding it? What are you feeding it? You're feeding it something that's not giving it the nutrition it needs. And we don't do that with our patients here. People that come in, the average person that comes and sees me has been to 12 doctors, and diet is never discussed. They might tell them, well, avoid gluten, something like that. But Joel Wallach's work proved they eliminated 900 different diseases in animals by adding minerals back to their food, food, including white muscle disease, which was also called muscular dystrophy. People still have muscular dystrophy today. It's really heartbreaking to see these people and tell them this disease was actually, resolved in the 50s with animals using selenium. So again, a lot of stuff's hidden from people. We're getting sick. It's major business keeping people sick, and it's pretty sad. And that's where we come in.
Yep. He mentioned that the reason that you don't have insurance for animals is because they already put the minerals in the food. And one of the video I always show with my minerals lecture is a few miles from my house, there's a farm. My wife actually saw this last fall. The cows that actually licked the entire middle of the barn door, they licked the paint all the way down to the wood. And I noticed they actually chewed through pieces of it. So like in animals, it's called cribbing when they start chewing on non-food items. Kids get it. They call it pica with kids. And my wife has told me a story about how in college she had a friend that would bring a stack of napkins to class and eat them. And that's, to me, learning what I have from Dr. Wallach and Diverse Health Services and yourself. That's a cry for minerals. That child is deficient and needs minerals in a major way.
Absolutely. Whenever you see kids eating inanimate objects, okay. I saw a child last year, I think it was, and he was putting all kinds of stuff in his mouth. And I told his mom, this is a mineral deficiency. And you're exactly right. How they solve the cribbing for animals is they put a salt block out there, and the animals will start to lick that, and they'll stop eating the barn door and the paint and everything else. It's just it's a sign of starvation, essentially.
Yes.
And nobody really understands this stuff. Whenever you tell people that they're starving, generational starving, it just kind of goes right over their head. But we're starting to see the effects of that in our population today. How many children break a bone very easily? How many kids run across, a lawn? Or I know of a patient who had a kid run across the couch and snapped his ankle on a throw pillow. I mean, talk about how frail people are today. And every 3 days in our country, a child athlete drops dead. Every 3 days, a child athlete drops dead because of heart failure. Yep. Because they're essentially starving of B vitamins to run their heart. And we can't get this in our food. Again, it's completely blocked. The stuff you're going to find at the grocery stores or the vitamin stores are essentially going to be synthetic, which means, we can't even copy a blade of grass. We don't know everything that's in that blade of grass. We haven't discovered all the plant chemicals and the trace enzymes and the co-minerals. And to think that we can just go duplicate that process in a lab, we're missing a big picture of the piece. And so food, minerals, vitamins, things like that, they have to be grown or raised, period. Yep. You can't make them in a lab. You'll make people sick.
Yep. Right. There's no doubt about it. Nature has the answer. You can either fight it and eventually lose, or you can embrace it and try to discover everything it's got for us.
Exactly right. Exactly.
So you mentioned signaling a few minutes ago, and I know it's important to eat nutrient-dense foods as much as you can, given the soil health, and taking intelligent whole food supplements that are not synthetic. What do you mean by signaling, and how important is signaling in our bodies, and what can a lack of efficient signaling do to us?
That's a great question. That again gets missed by a lot of practitioners, a lot of doctors, and it's something that people don't really talk about. Okay, when someone gets ill, when they get sick, it's one of two reasons. Okay, poor self-function, and that is kind of what we're talking about: having the adequate nutrient, having adequate minerals, adequate vitamin D, all that stuff. Okay, that is function. All right, and then the signaling side is What's the message you're giving your body every day?
Yep.
And this can come down to your attitude. You know, a lot of people's attitudes are to where they are looking for things that offend them. They're just looking for something to set them off, rather than looking for something that fits your lifestyle, fits your ethics and who you are. So attitude is one, and again, thoughts is another one. Okay, thoughts, and that is, are your thoughts negative or are they positive? Are you finding something to be happy for every day, or are you just crabby and finding things to complain about?
Yep.
That is your signaling. What's the signal you're giving your body? And that can't be overlooked enough. I have seen people, I've worked with patients for years, and I've worked with many people that have perfect blood work. Their vitamin D is, 90. Okay. They're good on their minerals. They're good on all their stuff. They do their breathing techniques and so on and so forth, but they have such a toxic relationship with their spouse or their mother or their neighbor, that all day long, that's all they do is sit and dwell and sit and feel sorry for themselves. And if I just get sick, maybe they'll, give me some attention.
Right.
With a perfect blood test, again, that's a signaling problem. And these people are not happy. So what I would say at the nutshell is, if you want to improve someone's signaling, find out what makes them happy, and they're going to have to do more of it. If they don't like their job, they're going to have to find a way to find a, time where they can put an investment in themselves. In other words, find your hobby and double down your time or triple down your time doing that.
Yep.
Again, that's what's going to make you feel better and wake up out of bed and have a purpose. Because if you wake up out of bed and you hate your job and you hate your spouse and you don't like your life and everything's, wham, 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 it doesn't matter what vitamins you take. It doesn't matter how good you eat. Okay. So you've got to make sure you're giving the body the right signaling. You're giving your body the right messages. You want to make sure that you're around people that lift you up and make you feel proud and make you feel like you belong. You don't want to be around people that make you feel like crap, because then, what's the use of taking all this stuff if you're not happy with living? You know what I mean?
Yep. One of my favorite slides from one of Dr. Randy Tent's lectures. I've seen his lectures probably 10 times each. He's who I credit for sort of red pilling me in this way and seeing a different side of things. Is that the slide was what suppresses your immune system, and one of the bullets was toxic family members. And I don't see myself as having any toxic family members. I won't name names, but I did have a little bit of a rough start to a couple relationships, but we worked at it because it was worth it, and we came to a common ground, and things are great now. But it's one of those overlooked things that sometimes is hard to admit, and to have that introspection to say, hey, maybe this isn't the best relationship, or what can I do to help make it a positive one? And if not, I need to move on and surround myself with positivity, because it's more than the food. It's if you surround yourself with negative people, like in a group, then you leave and you feel exhausted. Those energy vampires, what those are called, and that can affect you in profound ways.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. So that's essentially what signaling is, and that's just as important as making sure you're taking the right nutrients. It's also making sure that you're driving your nervous system the right way, and that's huge. And oftentimes, some of my mentors and some of the health gurus that I respect, they say that signaling is actually more important than eating, and I would have to agree. I do know people that they eat like crap. I mean, they really don't eat good quality food at all.
Yep.
Nothing bothers them. They have nothing really gets them stressed out. And you know what? They don't look like they're aging at all. So I've seen cases where people have phenomenal signaling and they're eating junk and they're still aging okay. Now, what's going to happen is that's going to catch up to them eventually. Your body's going to run out. But that just shows that the correct signaling can really do a lot for keeping your health vibrant.
Yep, for sure. That's great stuff. It's one of the things that I shunned for most of my life, is that, the whole other side of the coin. It's like, well, no, all it matters is what you eat. And no, thanks to you, you've helped open my eyes and my mind to a whole different level of health. And it's not just the food you eat, but The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton is a great book that everyone will agree that our thoughts can make us sick. So why is it such a stretch to say they can help heal us and make us well is a great question.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that people don't talk about, but your thoughts are absolutely correct. I mean, you are a biological antenna, and people don't realize that your thoughts are going to manifest where your life goes. So
Yep.
if you want to have a productive life that you're proud of, something you're going to enjoy living in, you've got to get your thoughts right. You've got to get your thoughts going in the right direction. You've got to surround yourself with the right people, because the people around you will rub off on you. Okay. There's a thing called microRNA that is little pockets of data, and the people you're around will influence your genes. And like you just said, you're around people and you leave and you're exhausted, or your neck hurts or something else. You're actually absorbing their microRNA expelled from their breath, and that can dial in your genes. And you know the same thing, if you go around someone you really admire and you love them and you know that they're authentic and they have a good heart, and you're around that person, when you leave, you automatically feel lifted, you feel warmer, and you feel better. So that can't be overlooked, and it can't be overstressed to really be around people that make you have that warm feeling. Okay.
Yep.
And every day is different. Some days you're gonna have good days, some days you're gonna have bad days. But what's important to get an eye on this signaling thing is, if you could tally up the numbers at the end of the day, you want to have many more positive tally marks than negative.
Yep.
And if you can do that for a couple of weeks, you're going to see some pretty cool things start to manifest in your life.
Yeah, I think it was Dr. Zach Bush mentioned, you go outside, get in nature and breathe it in. Cause it's not just people, like the plants and the environment have that RNA that we absorb when we breathe. And he mentioned in particular, I think ferns. If you're around an area where ferns are growing, you're in a good environment. You should be out there breathing that in.
Absolutely. And that's something that Zach Bush pointed out. It was a big mystery for many years, because most of our DNA doesn't code for a protein, so they called it junk DNA. And then they actually discovered, wow, microRNA is what makes our genes function. That's where our proteins come in. And where's this microRNA coming from? Your environment. Yep. So if you're walking out in the woods, if you're out in nature, the organisms around you, the mycelium in the soil, the bacteria in the trees, the bacteria are expelling microRNA, and that is going to interact with you and dial in your genes or dial them down. That's why I've met many people, hunters. I've met many people that hate their job and they're very stressed out, but they go on these vacations every year, and they go out, they camp, and they hunt in the woods for 2-3 weeks.
Yep.
And I asked them specifically, how do you feel when you're out there? Oh man, I feel more alive. I feel better than ever. Yep. And then what happens when it's over? I come back, I fly home, I go back to my cubicle in the office, and I'm sitting there working, and everything changes. Exactly. It's the microRNA in your environment that's, again, turning your genes off towards disease or turning them on towards disease. And what I tell these people is, why don't you bring that microRNA with you as much as you can? What do you mean? Having flowers around you. If you're in a cubicle, get some fresh flowers, because they can absolutely lift your spirit a little bit. And if they're alive and in dirt, and you have that on your desk, breathe that stuff in a little bit. Get down in there and breathe that flower in, a couple times a day. And you're actually changing your genetic structure just by doing that, rather than sitting there and breathing it over a computer all day long. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I think it was over in Scandinavia, if I remember right, they started to prescribe hikes rather than antidepressants for depression.
They're so ahead of us over there. I mean, they're just like they're doing the quantum stuff,
Yep.
I always tell people, look at Queen Elizabeth, right? How old is she? Mid-90s, right? Still functioning, top of her game.
Yep.
We don't have one politician reach the 90s that's functioning like her. Why? Difference in healthcare. Why? because she has holistic doctors who are doing muscle testing and working on her.
Yep.
That's exactly why. That's why she looks the way she does, and our politicians look the way they do.
Yep. Yep. No doubt. So we mentioned a couple of our shared mentors. Dr. Randy Tent, Dr. Jeff Seneschal are a couple of my favorite mentors. Yourself. Who are some of your mentors outside of the people we've mentioned, and maybe just briefly talk about some of the things you learned from them?
Okay. I'd say my wife is a mentor in many ways. She's really opened my eyes. In fact, a long time ago, we're actually laying in bed next to each other, and she was talking about energy, and I go, like energy, like electricity type stuff. And she actually did something with her hands, and I could feel it in my hand. And I said,
wow.
I go, do that again. And she did it again, plain as day. It came right back. So I would say she's one of my original mentors. And then she introduced me to some of these people, like Dr. Rhodes, and he was the best practitioner.
Yep.
And then he really helped me out with contact reflex analysis. And then Dr. Stuart White, he's another one that is, I would consider one of the greats, like Dr. Tent. Okay. They know each other really well. Dr. Stuart White helped refine my contact reflex analysis and taught me systems of the body, how to approach and treat infections this way, treat HPA axis this way, which is what's going to run your endocrine system. Andre Camelli introduced me to quantum integration, and that took everything to a whole nother level of what I was doing here to going out. That's where he introduced some stuff that was just mind-blowing, because it was already what I was doing, but there were no limitations to it all of a sudden, and that was just mind-blowing for me. Dr. Randy Tent and Dr. Jeff have been quintessential for nutritional protocols, and they're just way ahead of the game.
Yep.
There's just many, many more I could talk about. Jerry, and some of these guys are people that I've come in contact with that I've never met, but I've studied over the years. Dr. Versendahl, I would say, is probably one of my original mentors. Yep. And that was Dr. Tent's mentor. So I never met Dr. Versendahl, and he's one of these guys that had a mysterious death.
Yep.
But I was at a meeting years ago, and I had a gentleman come up to me, and he goes, you're really eager to learn, aren't you? And I said, I can't get enough. He goes, I see that. You're here before everyone else, and you leave after everyone else, and you're always engaged. You never look at your phone. You're always paying attention. And I go, you're exactly right. I want to make a big difference to the people that come see me.
Yep.
And he goes like this. Okay, this never happened. And he slides me some CDs, and I'm like, what's this all about? So I take it home and I watch it with Tiffany, and it was a 1989 film of Dr. Versendahl. Okay. And it was VHS. And so you had the tracking lines kind of going on it, but I see Dr. Versendahl and he's in a hotel room in Colorado, 1989. And there's a gentleman introducing him on a microphone. And this guy says, my name is Dr. So-and-so, and I'm a biochemist from UCLA, and I have multiple degrees in this, and we do a lot of internship work with people. And I met Dr. Versendahl years ago, and I watched him do this contact reflex analysis, and I told him, there's no way a guy could do this. There's no way a man could walk up and figure out these problems on a person this quick and figure out what to do to treat it. You have to run a urinalysis. You have to do blood work. Yep. And I watched him do it to people successfully all day long. And so he goes, I know you guys aren't here to see me. You're here to see Dr. Versendahl. So here he is. And this gentleman comes up, and he's just, he's Dr. Mentor's protege, and Dr. Tent's protege. And he's mentioned this many times, but Dr. Versendahl goes up there and starts using this unique testing process and finding people with viruses, finding people with impacted bowels, finding people with thyroid problems, finding people with trapped emotions. Does it all day long. And when I saw that on this film, I go, I have to learn that. I have to learn this technique. It's absolutely phenomenal. So that's where I first got introduced to this, and then people that he had taught actually helped me really refine it to make sure I was not missing anything. And since then, it's just been nonstop excitement. Now I'm in the position where I'm training some doctors.
Yep.
I've got many doctors from different states, Kentucky, Washington, stuff like that, reaching out to me and wondering, hey, what can I do to get better outcomes in my practice? And so what I do is kind of introduce them to some very basic testing that started out the same way he did. So it's
Very
pretty
cool.
awesome.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I've never been so engaged and open to learning more than with this topic. It's like my head's open, just keep cramming information in, because it's only going to make me better as a husband and a father and a practitioner now with my clients. So it's extremely useful stuff, and it's only going to make me a better practitioner.
Yeah, I mean, and you're exactly right. And you did hear that interview with Dr. Central and I, another avid contact reflex analysis expert. And I flat out asked him, how many people come in or misdiagnosed? And he goes, all of them. I said, how many times do you run, advanced stool sample tests on people, GI map and what were some other ones? I can't even think of the other tests right now. There's some pretty in-depth lab tests you can run on people's GI stool samples.
Yep.
And a lot of times they'll reveal negative on parasites, even though they have a red hot parasite reflex. So whenever we start giving these people herbs and enzymes and things like that, they'll start having relief, their irritable bowel, their constipation, their diarrhea, their moods improve, everything by getting rid of these stealth infections that sometimes the lab tests, miss.
Yep.
And that's essentially what we see a lot of. People come in, they've been tested for this, and since it said negative, the doctor just kind of went on and did some symptom-based treatment on the people, giving them a lot of anti-inflammatories.
Yep.
I don't have a problem with using anti-inflammatories, but if you're doing it for symptom control, your patient, one day it's going to come back and bite them really hard. You cannot do symptom-based treatment and expect your patient to have long-term results, long-term positive outcomes, because that symptom, whatever that root cause was that's still there,
Yep.
it's going to come back eventually, and the person's going to, they're going to come unraveled when it does.
Yeah, it's going back to the functional medicine question. It's getting to the root cause and not just masking those, because like you said, you can only keep the lid on so much or for so long before it's going to boil over, and it's treating the person, like you said, not symptoms or lab work. It's treating the person, which is sort of a hard concept for people to understand that have never experienced that level of care before.
Yeah. So it's, again, getting their signaling right first, and then you can start somewhere, so that's kind of why we start the way we do, is get them get them in a parasympathetic mode as soon as possible, so they can start to have their own immune system start to work, have their own stomach acid start to work, have their own pancreatic enzyme processes begin to work. And then it's easy to start cleaning them out of infections and things like that when their own body is working with us. If they're chronically stressed and you're trying to get rid of parasites, you'll never get rid of them. Their body isn't in that, it's not in that mode of healing.
Right. Yep. Do you have time for maybe 3 more questions?
Sure.
One of my favorite topics lately has been cholesterol, and Dr. Jack Wolfson, the paleocardiologist. I mean, that guy does his content is great. His book, The Paleocardiologist, is fantastic, and he really blows the doors off of the total cholesterol and treating people based on that, and the numbers game where it's what's high, what's low, is, in my opinion, been fully debunked based on his work and the literature that supports it. What are some of the common health, I don't want to call them myths, but some of the messages that the general public hears every day on TV or in advertisements? What are some of the more fun ones that you've sort of debunked in your practice?
Well, a lot of people come in there and they're scared of cholesterol. Again, they're in a fight or flight state.
Yep.
Toxic. And a lot of times simply going through their blood work, and showing them, look at your ratio, look at your total cholesterol, look at your HDL, and then when you divide those two, you get what's called your cardiac risk factor. And usually those are pretty good on people, but they're scared because their cholesterol is like 200 and some, or you know, I've seen some in the 300s, but their ratio is perfect. And I'm like, you don't need to be afraid of cholesterol. Be afraid of a poor ratio, or be afraid of the more intense clotting factors that get missed. Those are far more dangerous than any cholesterol thing. And if somebody has high triglycerides or high, LDL or something, I usually look at their diet. They're usually eating too many carbs or eating too many chips. Maybe they're stressed out. When you're stressed out, that can elevate your cholesterol a little bit too. But usually I have to tell them, cholesterol is not the problem. You want to do things to get your HDL up. You want to do things to get your ratio improved. Garlic forte is probably one of the best things it does exactly what HDL does as well on a blood test.
Yep.
Cataplex G, those are fantastic for getting those ratios flipped around to where they're a little better. But whenever I tell people, your brain is half fat and half cholesterol, it really makes them think, I really need this. And then I show them I think it's the Frinningham study, where it shows that people age much better. They age stronger. They have actual stronger physical bodies. They have stronger minds when their cholesterol is high. So, again, it's just kind of debunking these myths that have been put out there. And I did a cardiovascular lecture about 2 years ago and shared all the literature on statins, and the room was absolutely blown away by how much cancer these statins cause, how much what they do. They cause dementia, they cause diabetes. The feds were fighting for years to put labels on these statin drugs that they will cause dementia and they will cause diabetes. Yep. And so it's just been overplayed, and all these people have been essentially killed off, and the companies have gotten away with it. So we're fighting against the grain here. But again, it's the people that are wanting to know the truth. They're wanting to know what it takes to be healthy. And I see a lot of people that have high cholesterol and they're aging great. They feel great. They function great, and they're not scared of this stuff. So.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine today, and I'm part of a networking group, and I stayed after to answer a couple of questions for people that had some, and they had mentioned that they had high cholesterol, and I said, well, you go through an intro and you sort of share a little bit about yourself, and I shared from the Framingham study, which, like you mentioned, is commonly used to say this is the reason we need a low-fat diet, but some of the gems in there would lend to a different opinion. But it was something like over a cholesterol at 200 or lower, 40% of the people had heart attacks. And if it's below 180, you get 3 times the incidence of stroke. And she said she had high cholesterol. And I said, well, can I ask what it is? And she said 220. And I sort of smirked. I didn't mean to be disrespectful, but right, that's low in my opinion. But there are more factors at play. You can't just play that number. But the fact that somebody wants to get her on drugs and her cholesterol is only 220 without knowing more information is a disservice, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you're gonna see more of that, especially being a certified functional medicine practitioner. What you're going to be doing a lot of is reading patients' blood work for them. Okay, there's been easily half a dozen cases this year alone of me showing patients how to read their blood work, taking it back into their doctor and showing them, no, I don't need statins. Look at my ratio. It's perfect. And the troubling thing is many of these doctors have no clue on how to even read their blood work. So for them, that cholesterol, it gets out of a certain range and immediately they think statins. And there's so much more going on with that they're actually doing a huge misservice. And then again, that's why one of the reasons our medical system now is the 3rd leading cause of death.
Yep. Yeah, I like to call it guidelines-based medicine. It's if you're in this outside of this bracket, then you need this drug. And you look at the history of like blood pressure over the last 30, 40 years, it's done nothing but go down and down and down. And now people, I mean, it goes up 10 points just by being in a doctor's office. So it's not as simple as just, well, your numbers are here, boom, let's get you on a drug. There's way more to it.
Yeah.
Couple more questions. What advice would you give people like me that are just getting into this industry, started their own practice, but are extremely passionate about learning and helping people through proper nutrition, education, and intelligent supplementation? What have any advice for people like me and anyone interested in doing this type of work?
Develop thick skin first off. Okay. Another one is just grow every day. Try to mimic nature as much as you can and grow a little bit each day. And that's what's going to have profound effects on you over time. Don't ever think that you can master it all. It's very difficult, but what you need to do is just grow and learn a little bit each day, and double down and triple down your efforts on what you love to do. Tiffany now for a long time has said, we need to do a niche. Maybe we should do cardiovascular. Maybe we should do stealth infections. Maybe we should do this. And I'm like, I love them all. I love them all. I don't know what to really specialize in, but that just comes because I don't unplug. When I get home, I'll be sitting outside with my family. My little daughter will be playing in a sandbox, and Tiffany and I will be reading something or reviewing something or listening to another lecture or doing something. I don't watch any games.
Yep.
I couldn't tell you the name of one athlete on our Kansas City Chiefs or the Royals, or I don't watch any of that stuff because it's not serving me. It's not serving my family. It's not helping me improve or grow. So grow a little bit each day. Find what you're passionate about, whether it's minerals, whether it's mushrooms, whether it's, things like that, and just learn more each day. And you're going to have clients, you're going to have patients come to you. And what's going to be nice is your confidence level is going to go up as you know more and more about this stuff. And there's no shortage of sick people right now. So we need to really engulf ourselves in knowing as much as we can, but also recognizing the patterns of things. Like, again, the signaling and the function. If you can get those two patterns down, and again, it takes a little time, but once you get those two down, and that's one of two ways people get disease. End of story. End of story. It's either a functioning problem or a signaling problem. And when you recognize those patterns, the information is already there. So it's a little less daunting to work with. So.
Yeah, mentioning the sports teams makes me think of a story Dr. Tent told about, he's a hockey player, and how in the locker room after the games, everyone's, well, they have two for $5 tacos and beers are $1, and he doesn't really care about that. And he mentions, well, maybe you don't need statins or this or that, and everyone gives him this strange look like he's crazy. And it's, I used to work in a corporate environment, and it's all fantasy football. Yeah. And people are pissed off over a bad call at a football game, and I don't want to be judgmental. I mean, that's certainly their interest, but say, come on, there's a lot more to be concerned about here, and than fantasy football or fantasy baseball or you name it. Not to say you can't do that, but I bring up something about a Diet Coke or Jack Link's beef jerky, and it's like I'm raining on their parade. So.
Well, there's a reason all that's there. There's a reason all those sports are there, and the teams are there, and the fantasy football is there. And it's the same exact reason back in the Roman gladiator days that they had, the gladiator battles and the execution of people in front of the entire public.
Yep.
And what it is a major distraction, okay? Because if you really are unsedated and you are fully engaged into your human brain and you're able to problem solve and think about things, you're going to look around and realize that, my kids are getting poisoned. My dollar is half of what it was last year, and I'm losing ground every day. I'm losing ground. And eventually the human side is going to get so ticked off that you're not going to stand anymore, that you're going to go out and stand in front of a crowd, like what's going on in France.
Yep.
These countries know how to protest. They know how to figure out they're getting screwed and they're not going to stand it for anymore, so they go protest. We don't see it on the media because people aren't going to do that here.
Yep.
So why will they not do it here? Simply because if you watch an athletic game and you are rooting for, let's just say the Chiefs, you're rooting for the Chiefs, and you're watching this game and your team wins. You drive home having this artificial victory inside your brain, thinking, woohoo, we did it.
Yep.
We did it. And that release, okay, that release gets you away from thinking about what are the other things that I'm losing ground on? What are the other, mechanisms that are actually affecting my household, affecting my kids' health, affecting my wife's health, affecting my pet's health, all that stuff. People don't think about that when you feel like you've had a major victory, and the victory is absolutely not major at all. A football game won. Why do you think those players are paid millions of dollars?
Yep.
Because they're excellent distractors. And when you're distracted by something like that, you're not going to pay attention to the other important things that are going on.
Yeah, Jason Christoff had a great 20-minute video on sports, and he talked about how I was just talking about this with my brother last weekend, and how it gives people that sense of accomplishment. And I grew up with sports; it was part of my life, and not faulting my parents for that. It is what it is. But when you start to see sort of what's really going on, the sinister side of it, it makes me a little sad that there is this whole other side of it. I wish it were just a game, and you get excited about it, but to think about the programming it gives people that sense of accomplishment, and to give them that high before they go back to that 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. It's an eye-opening video, and it's only about 20 minutes long.
Yeah, he's a master of pinpointing those things about how we are modern slaves. He's a master at that. In fact, I'm interviewing him again next month. Okay.
Oh, cool.
So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, there's another good video on that called "The Story of Your Enslavement" by Stefan Molyneux.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that one before?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad how it's right in front of our eyes, but we can save that for another interview.
You're right. Right in front of our eyes. It's right in front of our eyes, and yet we're too sedated to see it. Does that make sense? We're all too sedated. We're too toxic. We're too distracted, and our human brains are actually turned off. Otherwise, we would not be standing for this.
Yeah. Yep. No question. How can people learn maybe more about you and your practice? Any like lectures you have online? You have a YouTube channel?
We have a YouTube channel. I'd say probably you can go to our Facebook page, Back to Nature Lifestyle Medicine. And that's a great resource to look at all of our videos, autoimmune lecture, winter, all sorts of things. And that's where we store a lot of those video archives. So a lot of information there, and that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of us.
Okay. Well, any last thoughts before we wrap it up here and let you get back to your practice?
No, this was pretty good. I think you did great for your first interview.
Thank you.
And I think you're doing great as far as a practitioner goes. The way you're growing, the way your mindset is, the way you've developed yourself over the last 6 months has been phenomenal. So you're on the right track to helping people. And the problem is there's not enough of us. So we need more people with this kind of growth mindset that are out there acting from their heart, acting authentically. And when you are acting out of your heart and being authentic, that's when I think the universe, or you can call it God, or whatever resonates with you, is going to provide you with these more advanced skills to help people that come across you. And that's what my mentors said. Those were words right out of Dr. Versendahl. When we're healthy and our energy is good, humans, again, you have to be into this brain. Humans have the ability to put aside our own needs to assess the needs of someone else. And,
yes.
I think as you continue to grow and develop yourself as a practitioner, you're gonna get more seasoned, better, more confident. You're gonna be able to help a lot of people.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your mentorship and everything you've taught me and everything you're going to teach me as time goes forward here. And sincerely appreciate the time today. It's been an honor to interview you, and I'll have to come up with some more questions to do it again, because I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Was super nervous most of the morning, but I can't believe it's been almost 2 hours, and I feel like it's only been 20 minutes. So that's a good thing. So I appreciate your time. And yeah, let's do this again sometime.
Awesome. Awesome. My pleasure, Brian. It's been a real pleasure, man. So you take care, and
Thanks
we're going to keep
everybody for watching. And for anybody that's going to watch this, I'll post it to my company page. And it's been a real pleasure interviewing Dr. Gabe Roberts from Back to Nature Lifestyle Medicine. So thanks for tuning in, Dr. Roberts. Have a great rest of your day, and we will chat again soon.
Awesome. Looking forward to it, Brian. You take care as well.
All right, you too. Thank you.